All right, welcome. So today we're doing something a little different. We're not actually getting into a theological debate ourselves. Instead, we're going to dissect the strategy of one. We're breaking down a pretty aggressive Christian guide that's designed to refute Islamic claims. Think of it like looking at the blueprints of an argument, not judging the building itself. And this is it. This is the question the entire guide we're looking at pivots on. It's the central hub, and every single argument that follows is a spoke coming off of this one provocative idea. So just to be super clear about what we're dealing with, this isn't some academic paper. It's framed as a tactical manual. The source even uses the term kill chain to describe its step-by-step process. So again, our focus here is purely on the structure, the rhetorical moves, and how it builds its case. And that brings us right to this idea of polemics. It's basically a fancy word for confrontational debate. It's not about finding common ground, it's about winning an argument. Our goal isn't to take a side, but to really understand the anatomy of this particular argument, how it's put together from the ground up. Okay, so let's look at the opening gambit. Now, what's so interesting about this strategy is that it doesn't start by attacking. Not at all. Instead, the very first move is to use the Qur'an's own words about the Bible to build its foundation. And here you can see that first step in action. The guide handpicks these specific verses from the Qur'an for its opening move. The whole point is to try and establish a baseline, to argue that from its own text, the Qur'an treated the earlier scriptures as valid and trustworthy right there in the 7th century. So once that foundation is laid, the guide moves to what it calls turn 2. It takes a common Islamic claim that the Injil, or the Gospel, was a single book given to Jesus that's now lost, and then it immediately tries to dismantle it, using a mix of Quranic logic and a little bit of Christian history. And the logic here is laid out as a really simple 3-step argument. It's designed to be straightforward. Step 1, the Qur'an says 7th century Christians had the gospel. Step 2, historically, the only gospels they had were the 4 we know today. Step 3, therefore, the guide concludes, the Qur'an has to be talking about the New Testament. And that brings us to the guide's turn 3. Now, watch the strategy shift here. It's a really important pivot. It goes from using what's in the Qur'an to challenging the other side to find something that it claims is missing from the text. And this is the real heart of that challenge. The guide zooms in on the Arabic word tahrif, which means corruption. It argues that the Qur'an uses this word to mean people were twisting the meaning of the words, not physically changing the text itself. This distinction is absolutely central to their entire case. Okay. So right here, the guide's strategy does a complete 180. After using the Qur'an to build its case, it launches a counteroffensive. It starts directly challenging Islamic claims about the Qur'an's own textual perfection. And the tactic here is to mirror the kinds of arguments often made against the Bible. It's just a rapid-fire list of points, different variant readings, the historical event where Caliph Uthman burned other Qur'ans, the existence of competing versions today, all to chip away at the idea of a single, perfectly preserved text. And then this section ends with this sharp rhetorical jab. It's a line that's absolutely designed for maximum impact in a live debate. It's crafted to put an opponent on the back foot by contrasting how each tradition supposedly handles its own textual issues. Now the guide shifts focus again. The argument moves away from analyzing the holy books themselves, and instead it zooms in on the historical person of Jesus. Specifically, it looks at his religious practices and the timeline of his life. This visual makes the point in a really stark, simple way. It's just a checklist. The guide argues that if you look at the documented life of Jesus, he followed 1st century Jewish law. He went to the temple, he observed Jewish feasts. It then contrasts that with core Islamic rituals, which it points out came about 600 years later. The simplicity of it is a key part of the strategy. So this brings us to the final part of the strategy. The guide frames this as the end game. It's a series of questions that it presents as a kind of checkmate, designed to be, in its view, completely unanswerable. And this is what the guide calls turn 10. It's a huge historical challenge. You see, it's not just asking if the Bible was corrupted, it's demanding the specifics, the receipts. Who did it? Where did they do it? When? How? And maybe most importantly, why? Right, and this leads to what the guide calls the historical void argument. By listing all these things it claims are missing, it's basically making an argument from silence. It's saying that for such a massive, world-changing event to happen, there should be some kind of historical record. And since there isn't one, the claim is just an assertion with no real proof. And we end on this. This is what the source itself labels its final kill shot. It's a question crafted to create a theological dilemma. It forces a choice between God's command being perfect and the book he commands people to follow being corrupted. It's the strategic endpoint of this entire polemic, and it's meant to just hang there in the air, leaving you to think about the power of a question like that in a debate.